assembled a high-level array of speakers. Let me introduce them. So to my left, we have Ater. Ater is the director of the Central PPP unit in Egypt, and he manages feasibility studies, preparation and tendering of PPP projects across the various sectors: utilities, transportation, health, education, communication, and also tasked with sort of generating the PPP pipeline of projects. Next, we have Morgane on my right. Morgane is Senior Project Manager at the Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation. GIB, together with Bloomberg, has been appointed as the manager and the operational secretariat to operate the label jointly. And Morgane plays a pivotal role in overseeing this deployment of a Fast-Infra Label. And her responsibilities include project pipeline development and facilitating the operationalization of the label through, in particular, forging strategic partnerships with the various players involved. And next we have Ori. So Ori is the Chief Content Officer at the Global Infrastructure Hub. We have GIB and we have GIH. So the Global Infra Hub, part of the G20. He leads strategy and delivery of initiatives and has been representing the GI Hub at the G20 Infrastructure Working Group and at the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group. He's also responsible for the GI Hub online data research and tools. And last but not least, we have Jean-Christophe. Jean-Christophe is an international mediator and serves as the executive director of WAPPP. So you should be familiar with him by now. If you attended the previous sessions, he's gained experience with Bombardier, a number of big names in the contracting and infrastructure industry, and today specializes in governance and deal mediation as a performance catalyst for better PPPs. So without further ado, let's jump and kick off the session with an overview of the Fast-Infra Label, and I'll ask first Morgane to present the label. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks, François. And thank you all for joining today's presentation of the Fast-Infra Label. So I think I'll try to first give you a picture of what the Fast-Infra Label is and how. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah, perfect. What the Fast-Infra Label is and how in fact it can really help channel funds towards sustainable infrastructure and especially focusing on emerging markets. So Fast-Infra Label should be seen as a one-stop shop that we are developing. What I mean by one-stop shop is that we are building Fast-Infra Label as a meta standard. So we are building Fast-Infra Label as a standard that builds on other existing standards. So to name a few, the EU taxonomy, QII, and also local standards and frameworks. And so the idea is for projects, when they will be reporting on their sustainability, on the usual ESG criteria, so gender, climate, governance, will be reporting on what is existing already with the mean that we are creating today on the platform that we are creating, so the Fast-Infra platform. So that's a bit setting the scene. And we believe that Fast-Infra Label can really be a success in the future. And we are building this today. And I think trying to today give you like a few of the success factors of the label. So I think there are our slides. Not too sure how to. If we can just move the slides, please, but not too sure how it works. So the success factors, there is the why. The why is that the Fast-Infra Label really answers a need from the market. We are creating a tool that, yep, but I cannot. There was a clear ask from the private sector to enable more of their funds to be towarded to sustainable infrastructure, and that is what we are aiming to do with this label. And one more, please. Yeah. So that's the why. The other success factor is really the who. The who is behind the label, and those are both who is at the initiative of the label and who is in our governance bodies. And then there is the how. The how is the platform that we are creating with our partners from Bloomberg, who are really creating like a digital, very intuitive platform that will be user-friendly. So I'll just quickly go through those points. The who, how was FAST initiated? So FAST was created in 2020 by a multi-stakeholder initiative led by HSBC, GIF, the World Bank with IFC, with OECD, and under the auspice of the One Planet Summit led by President Macron. Seeing that this group was really creating this tool and the FAST group to channel private investments towards sustainable economies, more joined the initiative, and especially the private sector, so Meridiam, Macquarie, but also many DFIs and other MDBs. And this led today to our governance bodies, whom are supporting our initiative on a daily basis, and whom we are showing here on the picture. And here what we are seeing is that really the initiative that we are creating, this label, is really backed by a tremendous group, very powerful in the infrastructure sector. So that's the why and the who. Going to the how, what we are developing today with our partner from Bloomberg is a platform, a digital platform, where projects will be able to go to, so a website where projects will be able to go to and really report on their sustainability in a very intuitive process. The idea here is to create something that is quick, efficient, intuitive, where projects are able to quickly give their sustainability data against our framework. And maybe here we can, maybe one more, please. Against our sustainability framework, which is declined under like four dimensions that you are seeing with the 4 boxes and then specific criteria underneath. And this, provided that they answer all this with the right answers, I would say, this would give them already one step towards the Fast-Infra Label. And this is something they will be able to showcase to other investors. And the idea here, what we are trying to do with this intuitive tool, is to enable all projects to apply, and especially all stages of projects, and especially focusing on projects in development, the ones that are the most in need of funds and that are really struggling to find those funds. And by working with the people that we showed before, and by giving this label and really bridging the two, this is how we are aiming to get those people invest in those projects, and have this private capital trickle down to those projects which are sustainable and have this credibility factor that is here. So now I'll try to give you a bit of a picture of where we are. I think what's really important to say is that the Fast-Infra Label is live, it's running, and we really encourage you to apply. And there are different means to apply. And I also encourage you to go to our website, thefastinfralabel.com, to see how you could participate towards the label. So the label is live, and what we've been doing this year is that we've been focusing on energy projects, the ones that we've been hearing from people yesterday, the ones that are really attracting the most financing, where the people are most looking into it, and therefore we've been focusing on those projects. And today we have like PV and wind projects that are under assessment. this was 2023. 2024, we really opened the label towards more projects, more geographies, and more technologies. And therefore, again, really encouraging you to apply. So if you have like a rail project, if you have a wastewater, this will become available as time goes. And then, what does it mean to apply? So here, maybe if we can, maybe one more. Perfect. Thanks. So what does it mean to apply? So there are four steps to the application, which are broken. So 4 steps that can be split into two bigger categories. The one on the left-hand side, which leads to the self-assessed label, and the one on the right-hand side that leads to the Fast-Infra verified label. So the one on the left-hand side is the one I was mentioning, which is an automated tool, quick, easy, and most importantly, free. So here, projects apply, go through the assessment, report on their data, and provided that they meet all the criteria, will receive a self-assessed label. This self-assessed label, projects will be able to use it and to communicate on this. This will be a recognized label understood by all. And then a verification process. This will require a third party, which will lead to the Fast-Infra label. This here projects will need to pay, which today we are planning on a $25K US dollar cost, which we plan to be minimal as opposed to the price of the cost of the overall capex of the project that we are today mentioning. And maybe just to the timing, door to door, today we are planning on 3-4 months. So within 3-4 months, you can have within 1 week, 2 weeks, you can have the first stage, the Fast-Infra label, or even 1 day if you're really quick. And then 3-4 months, you can have the Fast-Infra label. And I'll finish by saying that all this, and why we're on stage today, we are really tailoring what is really important for us and how this is all going to work, because we can have the best tool, we can have the best people behind. What we need at the end is the uptake, and projects and institution really uptaking the label. And here we are really tailoring the uptake towards different groups of people. So obviously we encourage projects to apply. This is one end, but then we are also working with funds. And here you can see the Pentagreen Fund, which is publicly communicating on this, whereby funds are uptaking the label in their investment strategies. And we're also working with DFIs also to have funds which are really tailored to the Fast-Infra label. And lastly, PPP units, which here I think would be the perfect opportunity in this label to really see how we can work with PPP units for them to integrate the Fast-Infra label in their mandate, in their tendering process, in their procurement process. So I'll stop here. I think hopefully I gave a bit of an overview of the Fast-Infra label.
Indeed, and in any case, you'll have access to the sort of websites and further resource information, and we'll have a few flyers here for you to take away at the end of the session. Okay, so now we've seen basically what this initiative is about, a multi-stakeholder, market-led initiative, one that is designed to be as user-friendly as possible, and to generate increased interest from private investors in those projects that would have been deemed sustainable through the label. Now, I'd like to turn to practitioners and get the sense of the need for sustainability. We are in 2023, that is halfway through the 2030 deadline assigned to both the Sustainable Development Goal Agenda by the UN and the Paris Accord on climate change. So we're halfway, but we're nowhere near where we should be in terms of reaching targets. And maybe one issue that is at stake here is indeed this sometimes the blurriness about what sustainability means, how to define and assess sustainability. If you've ever tried to look at the various benchmarks, standards on the market. This is a very fragmented landscape, frankly, an alphabet soup of acronyms ranging from regional, sectoral, multilateral standards, and it doesn't make things easy and life easier for those investors, those project developers or sponsors that want to refer to the right benchmark in order to position their project as fully sustainable. So I'd like now our practitioners to share with us their perspectives about the kind of challenges they are currently facing in defining and assessing what is or should be sustainable infrastructure. And let's start with you, Atta, from the Egypt point of view. How do you see this issue of sustainability infrastructure and the specific dimensions that may apply to Egypt?
Thank you very much. Actually, I want to start with the name of the initiative, which is the Fast-Infra, and it's very good to have the word fast, because in the PPPs it takes time, and the word fast encourages a little bit. I want to start saying here that the main problem that we face in financing the PP projects, especially when we're moving our PP portfolio to green financing and green projects, more than one challenge. The first is what to do to be green, how to fulfill the requirements of the financiers to be eligible for this financing. This is like a moving target for us. And I think, or I believe, that this initiative would put things together and put people together, the financiers and the projects, and as a prospect user for this platform, I hope to meet the financiers on one table and to have something rigid and robust that we can go for. The second thing is the accessibility. If we're going green, how to access this green funds. But the problem is that we're facing, and I think that this is all the PP projects in the world, we now have to add the layer of climate change and the green projects. This is and we are adding a layer of sophistication, which is important, and we have to do it. This is a mandate for everybody. But on the other hand, we're adding a layer of cost, okay, and investment. The main thing that would mitigate this extra cost, okay, is the green funding that's available, but very rarely accessible. So I believe that, or I hope that the Fast-Infra would put things together and have ends to meet. The last thing in this issue is how to tender out a PPP projects under the green layer, and how to manage this project after that. So how to put the KPIs that would address these goals, okay, throughout the contract management, not throughout the tendering only. It starts, I believe it starts from the selecting the advisors and putting the mandates of the advisors through the feasibility studies, tendering, contracting, and then managing the contract. This is the kind of knowledge that the PPP units need to understand. So I would recommend that the Fast-Infra would give some kind of awareness on how to access the funds, how to get this financing of sustainable infrastructure comes to reality, and building the capacity. I know that the WAPPP, we're working with them. This would be one of the coming workshops and mandates, but I think with the Fast-Infra and focusing on financing sustainable infrastructure, I'm just recommending that we, as a PPP units, we need this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. So we've just heard the standpoint from the head of a PPP unit, from the government's standpoint. Let now turn to Henri and from the G20 perspective. How to go from the G20 high-level QII principles to assessing projects on the ground. We've seen that the Fast-Infra doesn't intend to reinvent the wheel. We're relying on a number of high-level standards, the IFC performance standards, the Equator principles, and the GII quality infrastructure investment principles. How do we go from that level to the operational stage on a project basis?
Thank you. So I think at the G20 has sort of grappled with that issue around standards. I think if I look back 3-4 years ago, there was not a lot of consensus, but the G20 agreed on the QI principles, which I think is a good high-level framework around what is sustainable, what is green. So it includes efficiency, economic development, resilience, sustainability, etc. There is still, there's no consensus at the moment on having one standard among governments. There's obviously different views as to what the minimum requirements are, but I think it's encouraging to see that even at G20, despite those differences, we are moving towards testing out, implementing at the moment the QI principles. So I think QI principles are kind of like an overarching framework that's helpful for government to understand what it will take to move projects and to integrate more sustainability within them. I kind of see Fast-Infra as kind of like the next step after that. As I said, the QI, the idea is not to develop standards based on this. It's more to advance the framework so that we can have standards that will basically borrow from this framework and then be applied to projects. So that's basically where we are now. When I look at what's ahead, I guess, because as PPP need expert or consultant, etc. You may wonder, why should I invest time in understanding the Fast-Infra label if those things are still evolving? And we know there are other standards. What I would say is that, at least from the government perspective, and I'll talk about the private sector after that, there's clearly a view that again has changed over the past few years that it will happen. We're not exactly sure which standard, etc., but there's definitely recognition that we need those standards. And so I think for any project that you may be preparing at the moment, if you're not, if you're not trying to sort of develop the data points and trying to get that label or other labels inside your project, you're probably going to face issues further down the road. And the beauty with those standards, and Fast-Infra in particular, is that it was developed from existing other standards. So we're not, like you were saying, we're not reinventing the wheel. And so investing in getting the data and getting the recognition from that label will be useful no matter what happens afterwards. So that's definitely the view from the public sector. And from the private sector side, and I'll probably let other speakers talk about that a little bit more, when we developed 2 years ago the official G20 framework for accelerating private investment in sustainable infrastructure that was endorsed by all the G20 leaders, standard was actually one of the key pillars. And that framework was developed not only with the G20 governments, but with all the MDBs and with around sort of 50% of all the private sector investors. And again, there we heard even more strongly that they were all looking for A standards. They need that so that they can defend, they can actually get projects that will then be attractive to secondary market. At the moment, if you're a private investor, you know that even if you don't have those standards yet, the assets that you're going to invest in, at some point you're going to have to, you're going to probably sort of sell it or sell shares in it. And you know that the market has moved tremendously over the past few years. So you're going to need those data points. You're going to need the certainty that that project will feel that secondary market so that you can actually resell your assets. So I think really from a government perspective and private sector perspective, this is happening, and I think Fast, because it was developed in partnership with the private sector and borrows from existing frameworks, really gives you, I think, the great platform to start building your portfolio of green projects, regardless of what may happen in sort of 3-5 years. There might be evolution, convergence of those standards, but I would say at this stage that doesn't really matter. I think you should definitely sort of invest time in those, because this is, like I say, this is happening both from the government side and from the private sector side.
Thank you, Henry. Now turning to Jean-Christophe, so we heard the view from the government side, the sort of more maybe strategic or helicopter view from the G20 side. From a PPP practitioner on the ground, how do you assess the need for such a sustainability label? We know sustainability is a key dimension, should be a key dimension of a PPP project life cycle, but how do you see the sort of articulation that could be implemented?
Thank you for this interesting question, Francois. Let's jump right into what is sustainable. That will very much depend on the asset class, because if you look at transportation projects or mobility, I mean, there's so many different ways of applying PPPs. It will very much depend on what do you consider sustainable in that specific asset class. So I think first there needs to be sort of a Auslegeordnung, so a classification. What type of asset do you declare sustainable? And that will be very different depending on the country you're currently in. Just looking back at what happened with EU taxonomy, at the beginning everything was gas, and nuclear energy was not considered sustainable by some countries. So again, there's going to probably be some discussion what is considered sustainable. And at the same time, there's also, it's not PPP specific. We're looking at a labeling system that is for this very vast infrastructure, right? So while I salute that there are efforts being undertaken to try to create harmonization with this Fast-Infra group initiative, we see that there are also different other standards competing with that. I mean, just to name a few, like the Blue Dot network that was set up also a bit as a reaction to deficiencies that were seen with Belt and Road that were looked at from a certain perspective. There's also the Peers network, a framework that is a self-evaluation methodology that was set up specifically for public-private partnerships at the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Now, how does that all feed together? There are efforts also to use technology, like platforms like the Source, Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation platform that is trying to have a project preparation pipeline. And Fast-Infra also working on making open source access to have something that
of the Fast-Infra Label, and how it will help projects, and at the end, like governments and the whole infra space. So there are a few keywords that we are showing here, but I'll put a voice over them. First, the standardization. Here it's to understand that the Fast-Infra Label, its projects are all reporting against the same criteria, and this will bring like a clear signal to the market of what is a sustainable infrastructure, on the basis that we are all assessing infrastructure the same way. So really this standardization, like yesterday we heard a lot of the word playbook, and I think here it's really what we are trying to address, like standardize, give rules. Then the second point is transparency and data. Again, yesterday we heard a lot the need for data, and I think it's been said again just before. The idea is that the Fast-Infra Label will ask for data which will be available to investors, and so it will bridge the two. Having access to data will hopefully accelerate the due diligence processes, which will lead to a reduction in cost, like time is money, as we like to say. So reduction in cost, and also because we are like targeting sustainable infrastructure, better confidence for the market, less greenwashing, and therefore really channeling more funds, those green funds that we've been talking about, towards those infrastructure. And therefore it's really like a snowball effect. So transparency and data. Then credibility. Credibility is really what we're trying to do with this project again. First like this platform and then the verified process. So we have like this verification will give credibility to the projects that are claiming the sustainability component under FAST. And the last one, which we've been saying over again, it's a bit like addressing this moving targets of those multiple frameworks, multiple standards, which FAST again is trying to do. We're not reinventing the wheel, so it will be a dynamic process, obviously. But FAST will always like have like the latest standards, latest indicators, so that we all talk the same language, and which again goes back to the standardization, the transparency, the data, and the credibility. And I think all this will enable really to channel funds towards sustainable infrastructure. And so I think to conclude this, what is needed obviously is the uptake. Like obviously we need projects to uptake. We need projects to uptake the Fast-Infra Label to lead to this snowball effect. So we need the projects to uptake the label. We need funds, those green funds, to uptake the label, implement it in their mandates. We need the PPP units to uptake this label, and all this will work, I think, in synergy. Thanks, François.
Thank you, Morgane. And indeed, just maybe to re-emphasize very quickly, beyond the sort of initial stage of facilitating or simplifying the transaction at the initial stage of a project life, I think this label will also facilitate the ensuing stages, whether it's monitoring or reporting through the set of data that would have been assembled and curated in the data repository that Bloomberg and GIB are currently working on, or indeed facilitate as well refinancing. And here, if I sort of put my other hat of CEO of an infrastructure investor association, I can tell you this is an important dimension for investors that are rightly concerned with issues about liquidity, the capacity to effectively exit a project in a unlisted project finance infrastructure market. So all of this should be addressed and facilitated through the label, thereby contributing to attract more money from institutional investors that may be currently a bit shy about jumping in this market. And just another very quick precision, the governance has been set up so as to provide a good balance between public and private, emerging and developing economies, and developed economies, and it's all inspired by the green bond principle. So we've really tried to take the best out of existing frameworks or principles to make for both an effective and a balanced approach to implementing this label. Now, turning to Jean-Christophe, how do you see the perspectives for PPP specialists, PPP units to effectively appropriate this ready-to-use assessment framework?
Well, it's definitely something that's worthwhile promoting. We, as WAPPP, have joined the executive committee of the Fast-Infra platform, and we're ready to stream to promote that with our network of PPP units. That today we are counting 60 country PPP units, and I think once we start also accessing sub-country, sub-national PPP units, this will be a really interesting tool for municipalities, for regional projects. Imagine cross-border PPPs also, how they can benefit from having a harmonized standard. I think that's a big opportunity there to seize, to be able to interface with similar standards. And once we have this clear with the framework of the asset classes and what is sustainable in these different asset classes, I think then it's a promising tool that will enable a better project pipeline, that it's cheaper to get finance if you have sustainable projects. And it's not just because it's SDG aligned, but because if you do it, and we call that next level PPP, SDG driven, but also climate resilient infrastructure, you're actually de-risking the project. And it's good for the public perception also of the PPP. If you had proper stakeholder management, people will be more comfortable. And where I just extracted utter from the conversation in the room next door where the Global Council of PPP Unit was convening, this was the question that was addressed there. It's really fascinating. This is what is the biggest preoccupation for some government PPP units. And I think that this tool can be an excellent vehicle, a good platform to actually roll out better projects that have better public acceptance. We do that for the beneficiaries, not just for short-term political gain or for private sector to have the next deal. No, I think we've all shaped up, private, public, have understood that for the beneficiaries we need to have long-term good solutions. And this is a good tool for dispute avoidance to make sure that we are all aligned on the sustainability criteria.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. Turning now to Henri. So we've heard about the sort of short-term immediate benefits expected for investors by taking up this label and showing or demonstrating the compliance with the corresponding criteria, how it could help them raise additional financing. But there might be maybe further far-reaching benefits linked with the dissemination of the label, and I'm thinking of potentially influencing the position of regulators or the prudential capital charge treatment. Could you maybe elaborate on more indirect, further potential positive sort of takeaways or fallback of this initiative?
Absolutely. To touch on my, almost favorite, subject. So regulatory treatment of infrastructure has been something that the Hub has been trying to work on for a few years now. It's a complex topic, and so for those of you that are not well versed in sort of Basel insurance regulations, essentially at the moment there is no definition, except in few regions, including Europe, definition of infrastructure. It's actually so complicated. I mean, as we were talking about the alphabet soup, that this year the G20 asked us to do a full report on just mapping out all the taxonomies and definition of infrastructure. And you're like, well, okay, well, then we don't have a definition of infrastructure. What's the issue? Same thing here. We don't have a definition of sustainable infrastructure. That's okay. But actually, when it comes to regulation, the fact that we don't have that data, the fact that we don't have this definition means that regulators cannot, even if they wanted to, they cannot actually develop specific regulatory treatment for infrastructure specifically. We know that infrastructure is less risky than most of the other loans out there. We have some data for this, but the data is not good enough for regulators. And I think one of the key, one of the potential benefit of this is that by having more data, it actually will facilitate discussion with regulators. Many of them are very interested in sort of considering a specific treatment for sustainable infrastructure, because you're kind of mixing up two different things. Infrastructure is less risky, even though it doesn't have currently, as I say, any regulation linked to that. And obviously sustainable infrastructure will actually sort of create more stability overall, hence more fiscal stability. So from a regulator, that should be a done deal. But at the moment, again, we facing the issue of lacking definitions and data. And I think this label and potentially others, like I say, I don't necessarily think that we have to choose a winner at the moment. But what is critical is that we start collecting the data and we start focusing on those aspects on every project. That will then enable us collectively to be able to discuss with regulator and actually get extra benefits by actually getting that recognized on the Basel for banking or insurance regulator. So that's really on the regulation side. And I think I just wanted to jump on one of the aspects that you mentioned. I mentioned as well is really the thinking about exit strategy for the initial investors. I thought most of you are working on greenfield projects, etc. But really, I think investors, when it comes for like institutional insurers, etc., there's massive appetite for green infrastructure. But those investors will never be able to go down to a project level. Very rarely. I mean, you need like a really massive asset. They don't have the capacity to evaluate. They actually do need to have labels that tell them that this portfolio or this company actually has green infrastructure projects, and then they will be able to invest. And we're talking about like huge amount of capital. But again, they're desperate for green, but they're not able to do that due diligence themselves. And that's where I think that label could really benefit by creating, pool of projects, sometimes even across borders, that will actually be very attractive to those secondary markets. And secondary markets, as I say, it's almost like real estate, right? When you buy a house, you always have to think about the resale value, right? And that's where you start being able to invest in things that will actually increase the value of that asset. And I think that's where institutional investors are waiting. And like I said, they're very, very eager to have more projects to invest in. And I think that type of label will really sort of enable more investment from their perspective.
Indeed, thank you, Henri. And I can testify again that institutional investors are very much expecting and looking forward to that type of label to help them inform and guide their investment allocation decisions. Atta, now assuming that the Egyptian PPP unit effectively takes on a label like Fast-Infra, how do you see the narrative in terms of benefits for the broader development of the Egyptian infrastructure and economy? How could it help attracting more and more quality foreign direct investment, for example?
First, Francois, I want to thank you very much for having me on this panel, because actually I learned more and a lot over on the Fast-Infra, and actually a lot of clarification. I gained a lot of answers for this clarification, and it corrected some of my misunderstanding, let me say. As you are talking over this panel, I was thinking in my back head how to include this verified first Fast-Infra label into the terms of reference of my advisors. So their success is to provide this verification to the project that they claim to be green. So this will be the outcome that they will be measured successful accordingly. So I will need a lot of more information on how to include this into my terms of reference given to the advisors, because normally we get our advisors not discrete, we put them in a consortium. So all of them will be, quote, accountable for the success of the project, from the technical, environmental, financial, and legal, and everything. So I'm just thinking how to include this to be the final outcome of a project that was correctly or properly studied, structured, and before sending it to the market and to the investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Atta. That's a very promising and encouraging perspective. We have a few minutes left. If there's any question or request for clarification from the audience, that's the moment now to raise your hand.
We have a microphone that can roam.
Well,
you can also come up here and take the floor here.
If not, let me then conclude with a few words. And again, you have the flyers with the indication of the websites to refer to available on the first row table. But let me, I'd like to emphasize that this Fast-Infra Label, this is the first dimension of a broader initiative that we undertook at Fast-Infra Group. Obviously, the label is a keystone, a key dimension, but we are also working on a collaborative digital open source platform. It's not enough that a project be labeled sustainable. It also has to make economic sense. And for that, you have to exchange a lot of data to assess, measure, mitigate risks involved in a project. You have to connect the various stakeholders from sponsors, developers, public procuring authorities, investors, financiers, insurers, rating agencies, you name it. And this is a very time-consuming and costly exercise. So much so that in practice only big projects, the kind of which are directly supported by MDBs or DFIs, can effectively achieve this type of exchange, data, information, channeling and processing. So that's where we aim to come up with a complementary tool to the label through this digital platform that we're currently working on to speed up transactions so as to speed up transitions. And if it lives up to expectations, we're currently working on it with an array of market platform specialists. I would really hope that it can be a game changer, a sort of market infrastructure for the infrastructure market, specifically dedicated to facilitating the financing and refinancing and closing of sustainable infrastructure projects, the one that would have been labeled in the first place, to accelerate their financing by the market. So I encourage you all to give a look to those resources, Fast-Infra or fastinfragroup.org or Fast-Infra Label.org, and please take a flyer before you leave, and by all means consider submitting any project. Now is the right time to do so, to be among the ones that would effectively test and help ramp up this initiative, which, by the way, will also be presented and disseminated at the upcoming COP28 session in Dubai in a month and a half. So thank you very much, and please continue sort of looking into the next stage and next updates of this initiative.